and maybe start with the bow.
So good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Buddhist Path of Awakening's, we're calling the Foundation course. We are working our ways right now through Volume 1 of The Profound Treasury of the Ocean of Dharma by Chogyam Trungpa. These chapters are a digest of talks that Trungpa Rinpoche, Rinpoche is the title. It's kind of like saying Monsignor if you're a Catholic, you know that title. In the Tibetan tradition, Rinpoche is the title given to High Lamas. And he taught here in the United States for many years. Well, about 18 years. And every year after starting in 1973, he would take a group of students away for 3 months for a retreat. And in this retreat, it would be a combination of practice and study. The first month of the retreat would be devoted to the so-called Hinayana teachings. Hinayana literally means lesser vehicle. Trungpa Rinpoche emphasized its terrible importance, very important, its profound importance, and preferred to call it the foundational vehicle. The Mahayana, which literally means greater vehicle, was the second month, and the Vajrayana, tantric teachings, the Vajrayana, the adamantine vehicle, were taught in the third month. And there was always we would go through periods where we just sat, and then there would be periods when we do a combination of sitting and study. These talks were recorded and transcribed and were digested into these 3 volumes called The Profound Treasury of the Ocean of Dharma, which is kind of a pun, almost a joke, the title, because Trungpa Rinpoche's his full name was Chogyam Trungpa, and Chogyam was an abbreviation of Chukyi Gyamtso, which in Tibetan means Ocean of Dharma. So this is the Profound Treasury of the Ocean of Dharma. It's kind of a pun. And we are working our way through Volume 1, which is called The Path of Individual Liberation, because in this path, at the level of the Hinayana, the practitioner is concerned with escaping from the suffering and confusion of life. And so it's very much focused on oneself. And one achieves a great deal of this. And that's why it's called the Path of Individual Liberation, as opposed to the second vehicle, the Mahayana, which comes in the second month of those teachings, which is really where the person begins to understand that the path to Buddhahood and to happiness altogether involves helping other people. And the practitioner at that level of the path begins to be more and more inspired to be of service to others in every way, and basically winds up devoting their entire life to the service of others. And this is all in preparation for Buddhahood, which is the ultimate expression of that generous intent. Now, we have been working our way through Volume 1, and tonight we are going to be covering chapters 31 and 32, which are really about meditation. The point of meditation is altogether to wake up. To wake up from what? From the dreams which inhabit our minds and which often rule our days. We believe these dreams as though they were absolutely true. They're always about the past and the future, these dreams. And they are stories about our past, which are very, very selective, which really come from our training, as it were, that we have been inculcated in from the time we were born by our parents. So if you had parents who had particular biases, they probably transmitted a bunch of these biases to you. And you tend to see the world through those filters of thought about likes and dislikes and biases. Meditation is about waking up from that, about coming back to a world without those biased thoughts, a world seen clearly, stripped of preconception and judgment. The world of this, as it is, which is only happening now. That's where meditation takes place, now, no other place, not in the past, not in the future. So meditation is always about coming back to the present moment and cutting through the veils of thought, which color the way in which we see everything, the entire world, when we're involved in thought. But we can step out of that and see the world as it is, truly is, awake. And that's the path of meditation. So he starts out here by talking about there are basically two kinds of meditation in Buddhism. The first is called in Sanskrit Shamatha. In Tibetan it's Shine, and it means abiding in peace. That's what those terms mean. The second is called Vipassana in Sanskrit, Hlak in Tibetan, and it is usually translated as something like insight meditation or awareness meditation. I think awareness is probably a better translation, but sometimes when you come across insight meditation, you can know that it's referring to Vipassana, especially in Southeast Asia, where the term is given in Pali instead of Sanskrit, and it's Vipassana. Vipassana means the same thing as Vipassana. It's just that the language has morphed a bit as Buddhism moved throughout the world. Now, Shamatha is also called by Buddhists called the common practice because it's practiced by Hindus in the Hindu tradition as well as in the Buddhist tradition. So if you learn how to meditate in a yoga studio, for instance, or if you've practiced transcendental meditation, or learn from any other Hindu, Indian source, you have learned basically shamatha. Shamatha is one pointed focus on an object. That object can be anything. In Buddhism, the most commonly taken object is the breath, but it could be a mantra, as in transcendental meditation and in Buddhism, and it can be lots of things. It could be a candle flame, it could be anything you choose, and you bring your mind back from dreaming to one pointed concentration on the object. In doing so, you achieve three main benefits. The first is that you develop the muscle, as it were, of noticing when you're dreaming instead of awake. You know, you could be dreaming so much that somebody might call your name and you don't even hear it. It's very dangerous to be dreaming when you're driving your car. You could miss something important. So coming back is a good thing. That's the first benefit of shamatha. You develop the muscle of realizing when you're lost in dreams of the past and future and coming back, and the ability to come back to the present, awareness in the present. The second benefit is that you get a rest from thought. Thought is very stressful, more or less, depending on the thoughts, but all thoughts are always about improving things, changing things, wishing that things were different than they are. And that is stressful. And when you come back to awareness of something in the present, you give that up. So you get a rest from that. One teacher I know calls it he says it's like having a really good nap. I think it's more than that. You actually achieve a kind of peace of mind that's very restful and delightful. The third benefit, what is the third benefit? Barry, can you help me? I always forget. Coming back, getting a nap, and muscle. Oh, the third benefit's actually the first one, which is that you begin to realize the extent to which one spends one's days lost in thought. It's amazing. And most people don't even know. They just walk down the street thinking. We do that too. And when you begin to try to meditate, to come back from thought of the past and future, you begin to realize the extent to which you're ruled by it. So these are the three main benefits of shamatha, which Buddhists call the common practice because it's held in common with the Hindu tradition. Vipassana is awareness practice, and this is peculiar to Buddhism. It goes all the way through the Buddhist path from the very beginning. You begin to practice Vipassana, all the way to enlightenment itself. The practice really doesn't change, it just becomes better. You get better at it, of coming back and being aware. And as you do that, your understanding of who you are and what the world is and what that relationship is about, all that changes. And it goes by different names at different stages on the path, that relationship. So tonight we're talking about your shamatha practice, resting in shamatha, chapter 31. And he starts out by saying the point of shamatha is to achieve an even and completely balanced state of being by means of the 9 techniques for resting the mind in shamatha discipline. Now, this is classic, these 9 so-called techniques, but you have to understand that really these are sort of 9 experiences that you may have as you practice, and they can come in any order. They don't have to come in the order given here. And they're really experiences and understandings of your practice, 9 different aspects to it. They can be taken as 9 stages, as though you were going to develop this practice in 9 stages. I know people who've done it, but Trungpa Rinpoche never taught it that way. He taught it merely as, rather he taught it as aspects of what you're going to experience as you practice shamatha. He says, so they can come sequentially or not. And in these practices, tightness, which means strong effort, and looseness, a carefree ease, need to be balanced. These are the 2 main problems in shamatha practice, balancing your effort and the ease, because when you come back to true awareness, it's utterly effortless. But you have to make an effort to come back to true awareness. There is an effort. You say, oh, I'm thinking, I'm coming back, and you just come back. And the way to come back is to recognize that what you're coming back to is already here. So it's effortless to come back to it. You're not creating something new. It's this awareness that is part of our very being. So he says, in shamatha, with shamatha, you're developing a good personal relationship with your own mind, a healthy relationship, rather than quarreling. It's having compassion for yourself. See, you already are this. And so all you have to do is acknowledge that, come back to it, relax into it, be it. And this is the ultimate form of self-compassion, rather than beating yourself up saying, I have to be better, which is not compassionate for oneself. And that is a real obstacle on the path. The idea of self-improvement, which is so harsh and mean to oneself. And what we need to be doing is developing this kind of self-compassion, which in Buddhism has a name. In Sanskrit, it's called Maitri. Maitri, which means loving kindness to oneself. And this is very important to develop in Buddhism on the path. He says here, developing a good relationship with yourself, Maitri, is the root of individual salvation and the foundation of Buddhist practice. Then the more advanced ideas of selflessness, and it includes though selflessness in not doing harm to others or oneself. He says, otherwise you can't understand the Dharma, and your body and mind are not synchronized, they're not coordinated, because you're thinking, I should be doing this, and there's this separation between I and the thinking mind and what you're doing. When you come back to true awareness, everything is in sync. We're just right here. The body's here, what you're seeing is here, everything. He says, otherwise your mind is so adolescent that you have no control over it. You can't hear, much less absorb the teachings when you're thinking, because you can't listen properly. If your mind and body are properly coordinated, you can eventually achieve enlightenment. Enlightenment itself. And what they mean is, when your mind and body are coordinated, there's no effort. It's just everything is right here, right now, awake. He says, and then he says, that idea is the greatest idea ever thought of, thanks to Lord Buddha. This coordination of mind and body, bringing mind and body together. And by body, he means not only this body, but the whole world. Everything is body. You know, the walls, the furniture, other people. He says he did it himself personally. I feel there's no problem. We could do it too. And the natural preparation of sitting down and getting ready to practice is a good start. So we take a good seat. You know, you heard the instruction today. It was excellent. You take a good seat. You adjust your posture and you bring your mind into this present moment, into this situation. Now we're going to go through the 9 techniques of shamatha, the 9 aspects, you might call them, of shamatha. And they can come sequentially, they can come in any order, it doesn't matter. So the actual technique is called jokpa, which means placing or resting in shamatha. It's common to all Buddhist traditions. And there are 9 versions of this. They've been taught for centuries, they're famous, and so Trungpa Rinpoche is sharing them with us. Each has a corresponding power, of which there are 6. So some of them, there are more than one technique associated with each power, which some of these powers. And they connect you to the discipline and are both the effects you get out of the technique and the inspiration for practicing these techniques. The powers are the result of putting together the teachings in your state of mind. So the first technique, so-called, number 1, is resting the mind, sem jokpa. You'll get very familiar as you study this more and more with the Tibetan word sem. Sem is the thinking mind. It's not the enlightened mind. It's the ordinary mind that we all have. We all have enlightened mind too, but we're not paying attention to it. We're more focused on sem. Sem, which is thinking and worrying and hoping and all of that. So we're resting in this. You sit down on your meditation cushion and close off all external stimuli. Turn off the TV and the radio and be alone, or if you're with other people, everybody's doing the same thing. You close your eyes if you're doing this. Hold on a second. You close your eyes if you're doing pure shamatha. If you're doing vipassana, we keep our eyes open because it's all about awareness of your environment. But with shamatha, you're focused one pointedly on an object, and here it's the breath, which is the classic Buddhist shamatha object of awareness. So you can close your eyes and put your mind on your breathing and be aware of thought patterns. Ideally, you reduce your mind thoroughly into your breath. And so commonly, there are different styles of doing this. It's just what you feel comfortable with. You might pick a number, 10, and you go, you're aware of the out breath going out, and you say 1, and then the in breath comes in, and then the out breath goes out, 2, the in breath comes in, the out breath goes out, 3, and so forth, up to 10. And when you get to 10, you start over. Now, an important point, sometimes you'll just be thinking while you're doing that. What's for lunch? That person shouldn't have said this to me. And meanwhile, you're going out, 1, in, 2, and you go right past 10. Suddenly you're at 15. Here's the important instruction. Do not beat yourself up. That's not Maitri. That's being harsh. And you practice kindness towards yourself at that moment and simply start over. That's all it takes. That's a very important lesson, and it's an important thing to develop in your practice. Kindness to yourself. You just start over. And you can pick any number. 10 is one that Trungpa Rinpoche often recommended, sometimes 7, sometimes it might be 21, whatever you like. I often did it for 7. But then you start over when you reach that number. He says, When you've learned that it is possible to rest your mind in this way, this produces trust and respect for the lineage, the teachers who've gone before, who have passed it down to you, passed it down to all of us, and we're going to be passing it down to. So the second technique is called continuously resting, gyundu jokpa, literally or naively resting. And you extend your sitting practice as much as you can, not giving in to thoughts or the objects of the five senses. And when you do, when you give in to thoughts or the objects of the five senses, meaning you're really focused on that smell that's coming from the kitchen or that visual object that's passing through your field of vision, whatever it may be. When you do, you just notice it, let it go, and come back to the breath. So you can extend your practice. Apply this at the start of each practice session, and you can come back over and over again. He says 60 times in an hour, easily. It's no problem. And the best way to do it, to come back so many times, is not to beat yourself up about it, to just come back. And you come back another time and another time and another time, and it's fine. What you're doing is you're beginning to wear down neurotic mind by coming back to awareness. You're beginning to, as he puts it in another place, shift your loyalty from thoughts which are so fictional. Thoughts about the past and the future, they seem like they're really real, but they're just very, very narrow little dreams about what has happened and what might happen. When you think a thought about the past, it's a very narrow selection out of this huge panoply of experience that happened to you in any given moment. And it comes from our trainings. Perhaps you had an angry parent and you're having a fantasy about somebody that you've just met who reminds you of that angry parent. And this is all involved in this thought. Well, it's coming out of your past, your memories of the past, and conditioning the way you see the present, and then think about it. So let it go, come back to this simple open awareness of the present moment. Now the power, remember there's a power that's connected with each one of these techniques. And this power is the power of, the first power is connected with the first one, resting the mind. And it's the power of learning. You have learned that it is possible to rest the mind in shamatha. And this produces trust and respect for the lineage. I'm sorry, I missed that. That's the power, the trust and respect, because it becomes an inspiration. You're inspired. The second one, this continuously resting, literally or naively resting, extending your practice, and you do this 60 times in an hour. And the power is called the power of experiencing. You experience that you can be a good meditator right away, now. And this is produced by your confidence and the continuity of your experience, however much there is. Again, no self-criticism. Self-criticism is another dream. That's another thought, another falling away into lack of awareness. So you stretch your awareness out as much as you can, giving yourself tremendous encouragement. You sit and do the job properly. You just, whenever you realize you're dreaming, you say, coming back. You could say thinking, label it, thinking. And in labeling it thinking, no judgment, no harshness. You're not saying I'm a bad person. You're just observing it and then coming back. The third technique is called literally resting. If you lapse into dream or subconscious gossip, you just come back. Bring yourself back. It's in the same way that parents draw their children's attention back to their food. You need to keep bringing yourself back to the breath. And the power of this is just by remembering that you are supposed to sit on your cushion and practice mindfulness, you bring yourself back. We're not saying a lot here. This isn't like a complicated manual. And these things happen to us. It's given in this sequential order, but they may happen to us in an utterly different order. 4, closely resting. You deal with the most minute flickers of thought. This is the point of this one, that even little teeny flickers of thought, you come back from them. Big thoughts you label thinking, but little flickers, you just see them. Little flicker went by, And so you become aware of the most subtle, tiny, discursive thoughts. You try to overcome them and return to the breath. By remembering that you are supposed to sit on your cushion, and practice mindfulness, you bring yourself back. The fifth technique is called taming. And this is dular chepa. Dular means taming and chepa is doing. It's connected with non-aggression toward yourself. This is so important, non-aggression toward yourself. You no longer experience yourself as an obstacle or nuisance. You don't blame yourself. This is just a technique that you're doing. You don't blame yourself. We are so inclined to self-improvement. And when we blame ourselves when we fail at it. No. You have confidence. And then he says, or you fake it till you make it. That you can do it. You can tame yourself. So you keep going and you practice non-aggression toward yourself. I'm saying this over and over again, non-aggression, non-criticism toward oneself. It's a form of, it's so counterintuitive for many of us to do that. When you catch yourself doing it, let it go and say, oops, there I was doing it again, beating myself up for being a bad meditator. And you just let it go and come back to the practice. The fourth power, this is the fourth power associated with the fourth power. Remember, there's each technique and then there's a power. And this is the fourth of the six, being aware of the results of practice and the benefits of practice for oneself and others. It's really, you're coming back to sanity, clear seeing, and a happier way to be. These are the benefits for oneself and others. The sixth technique is called pacifying, Shiwar Chepa. Chepa means doing, and Shiwar means doing it peacefully. My refuge name is Shiwar Chidzin, peaceful Dharma holder. That's the name I got when I took refuge. So I know this word well. When you are resisting, it says, feel resistance to sitting, you ignore the anger and irritation and acknowledge the joy and relief of being able to sit and deal with yourself so thoroughly. It is a rare privilege. It's also, many likens it to training a horse with a long line, long, L-O-N-G-E. Now his wife was an equestrian, Trungpa Rinpoche's wife. In fact, she was an alternate on the British Olympic equestrian team, dressage team. And so he was well familiar with riding techniques. And he himself was a rider from Tibet. And his wife went to Austria and came back with one or two, I can't remember, stallions in Austria. There's a tradition of the Lippizaners. You can look it up, Lippazzaner, Lipizzaner stallions. And these are stallions that are used in dressage, and they have the unique characteristics of, number one, all Lippizzaner stallions are pure white, gorgeous. Number two, only Lipizaners, I think, do this. They can stand on their hind legs and jump straight up in the air. And there are photographs. If you Google it, you'll see it. And Trungpa Rinpoche used to ride a Lipizzaner stallion. He loved riding. So let's see, where are we? Shiwar Chepa. It says, it's like training a horse with a long line. The horse is unruly, and you have it at the end of a line, and you're letting the horse run in circles, and you're in the center. And you keep drawing the line in and restricting the horse's movement until the horse is pacified and finally becomes peaceful. He says it also connects with the power of general recognition of decency, which is being aware of the benefits of the practice for oneself and others. In this case, you're being aware of taming. This power has to do with the realization of choicelessness And what the choicelessness is your thinking mind with all its choices. And right here, when you come present, it's choiceless. The seventh technique, thoroughly pacifying. And there are three techniques for this. Whenever the heat of aggression comes up, you put more emphasis on the out-breath, on its simplicity and airy, windy quality. Whenever you are distracted by passion or lust, these are the three poisons, by the way, you put more emphasis on the solidity of your posture, your head and shoulders, feeling how solid you are when you begin to have thoughts of lust or passion. And finally, whenever you feel the drowsiness and dullness of stupidity or ignorance, you try to bring together the feeling of the space of the hall you are sitting in, your companions around you, your breath, and your head and shoulders. And this is the way you counteract stupidity, dullness. Now, these three, aggression, passion, and stupidity, are what are called in Buddhism the three poisons. If you ever see the graphic representation of the wheel of life, which is held by this demon, that's Yama, the Lord of Death. And it has six divisions, six main divisions, which are the six realms of confusion, of existence. And they're the God realm, the jealous God realm, the human realm, the animal realm. There it is. Thank you. Mary, did you do that? Yeah, that's great. And these big six divisions around that central circle are the six realms: God, the jealous God, human, animal, hungry ghost, and hell realm. And then in the thin circle around the outer circle that Yama is holding with his fingers, those are the 12 nidanas, the 12 links of the chain of karma. And in the very center, it's hard to make out here, but there is a rooster, a pig, and a snake. And they represent the three poisons. The rooster is passion, the pig is stupidity or ignorance, and the snake is aggression. And the idea is simply that as long as we're confused beings, we think of the world in terms of ourselves and others. There's I and other constantly. We're constantly dreaming these I-other relationships. And these I-other relationships can only take three possible forms. You either want to get the other away from you, you want to pull it towards you, or you stay the same distance because you're indifferent to it. If you have aggression, you push it away. There it is, that's better. And if you have passion, you want to draw it towards you. It's going to augment your existence. And if you're indifferent to it, that's stupidity, that's the pig. So, yeah, this is 7, thoroughly pacifying. And we are pacifying these three poisons especially. And the fifth power is of exertion. It takes effort to overcome strong obstacles such as unhappiness, hatred, or regret, he says, and the three poisons. So this is effort that we're going to really do this. 8 is one-pointedness. Se chik to chepa. Chepa is doing. Se chik, se is point, and chik is one. So it's one-pointed doing. He says, like number 4, you're thoroughly resting in that even the tiniest discursive thought can be overcome. But at this point, you can rest your mind in the post-meditation experience as well as in sitting meditation. So we begin to use the awareness practice of coming back from dreams into this simple awareness, not only on the cushion with our breath, but in post-meditation. That post-meditation is kind of a funny term for it. It means meditation in action. It means meditation in our daily lives, that we can come back from dream to this. He says, here you realize that you need to allow yourself a break, a fresh start, always. Sometimes we just get so mired in effort. He says, in fact, you can do that every minute of your sitting practice, and you can do it in your daily life too. You just come back, give yourself a fresh start. When you start one pointedly, you go right to your breath. Then if you feel harassed by your mind, by promises, or by nagging, you could give yourself a break for a few seconds and regroup your being. In that way, as you work with your breath, you always start fresh, in good condition. So we can do this all the time. You could do that every minute of your practice, he says. Finally, number 9, resting evenly. Nyampar Jokpa. Jokpa again means resting, and Nyampar means evenly. He says a quality of absorption, of making friends with your practice. In the same way that swans naturally swim and vultures naturally roam in the charnel ground, you should let your mind be as it is. Now, let me explain that image about the charnel ground. That's very traditional. You see, in both Tibet and in India, especially in India, if you die and you had money, a funeral service would be performed ideally on the banks of the Ganges, and your body would be cremated if you had enough money, and the ashes thrown into the river. Never mind that only a few feet downstream, people were bathing in that same water every day, every morning. And I'm not talking about a few people, I'm talking about sometimes millions waiting their chance, stretched out over a mile of shoreline, waiting to get their chance to go down and bathe in the holy river, which springs from Shiva's brow up on Mount Kailash. But upstream, if you were wealthy enough, your body would be cremated and the ashes dumped in the river. Now, if you were poor, if your family had no money, then your body would just be carted out and dumped in what is called a charnel ground. This is a place where you dump dead bodies, and animals would come and eat them, the dead bodies. And in fact, there are still charnel grounds in India. I've seen a few, but they're pretty much cleaned up with buildings to put bodies in. There's one right by Bodh Gaya, where the Buddha achieved enlightenment, that I went into when I visited there. So he says vultures naturally roam in the charnel ground because they're looking for the dead bodies to eat, you know. And so you should let your mind be as it is, like those dead bodies in the charnel ground, or like swans, that's a nicer image, that naturally swim, and the vultures that naturally roam and eat the dead bodies in the charnel grounds. So it's being kind to yourself, not torturing or blaming yourself. This is resting freely. Being kind to yourself. Can you get this theme of being kind to oneself? It's so important. He says you could take pride in being the greatest of Shamatha students. At this stage, mind is completely and thoroughly trained so that it can hang out in its own form. Your mind can be your mind. You're not blissed out. You're just this, right now. You can be you in the purest sense. Up to this point, you have never really been yourself at all, because you have always been too involved with your own little tricks, your thoughts, your ideas about who I should be, who I have been, your self-criticisms, your hopes for what you might become in the future, what you might get. Now you could finally just be yourself as you are right here and now. That is the idea of resting evenly, or absorption. It says the purpose of this discipline, of Hinayana discipline, is to make you into a decent human being whose mind and body are completely coordinated. You're not living a fantasy. You can give your attention to everything. You have less aggression and less passion, so you're somewhat more inclined toward enlightenment. The sixth power, which is connected with this resting evenly, is that with practice you can settle easily and naturally. And finally, he says again, these categories and powers are not at all necessarily linear. It's natural, like sneezing. If you do the practice according to the tradition, You will arrive at these points quite spontaneously. 617. Should we have a real brief discussion or any questions before Barry does his chapter? Yeah. It's marvelous the way he is constantly emphasizing how we have to be kind to ourselves.
Yes. That is amazing.
Yeah. Without that, there's no progress on the path. Then you're a professional achiever. You know?
Yeah, I had with that the power of learning, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yesterday I had a bit of a realization. Actually, 2 days ago, I was trying something new, and as I'm doing it, I'm trying to fix a stove. Never tried doing that before, and I'm doing it. And I'm watching my mind just tell all these stories, like you see, this is what you get being an accountant. You don't know how to fix things. You don't know how to do anything, and I'm just like, all right, okay, I see what you're doing there, and you're learning something new. And it makes so much sense, like the power of learning to like just quiet that self-aggression. You could actually shut the heck up, or that voice could shut the heck up, and you could actually see what's going on and do something. It's so common sense.
Indeed.
Mm.
We just got Judy's of agreement, I think.
Mm.
Well, okay. Barry?
Okay, well, Philip has something, I think.
Sure. I just wanted to mention on the bottom of 237, where he's talking about pacifying, that we can use habit to our advantage by developing a routine of a daily sitting practice. So he's talking, after he's talking about the long line, he is talking about how sometimes you don't want to practice. He says, you don't want to sit at all. You don't even want to hear about it. But as time gets shorter, and then he goes on a little bit and he says at the end, in the case of taming, this power has to do with the realization of choicelessness. So I put that together to mean if you can establish a practice such as John's group does, where every morning at 9:15 you're sitting, or every evening at 9 o'clock you're sitting, that's a kind of choicelessness, right? And you can take advantage of having created that habit to yourself and to others when they say, you need to do this or you need to do that. You can say, well, it's 9:15, I need to sit, or it's 7 o'clock, I need to sit. There's no choice here. And it just becomes very routine, very automatic. And it's a lot to be said for a daily practice that just takes on a life of its own.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. It's a big help.
Go ahead. What? Someone was saying something?
Judy was just agreeing.
I said it was a big help.
It is. And Rinpoche used to say to us over and over, just do it. It works. Okay.
Okay, we can talk about obstacles now?
Why not?
Yeah, this next chapter is actually the title is Identifying Obstacles in Shamatha, and it may be worth taking note of that it's hard to deal with these things unless you identify them, that a lot of these obstacles can be something we're hardly even aware of. It's just kind of the way things are. I've known people that, as far as they were concerned, meditation was struggle. That's all there was to it. So let's go into this. The first obstacle he has here is laziness. And when we think of laziness, usually we're thinking of reluctance to exert ourselves or not wanting to do anything at all, maybe. And in the reading, he points out also that a reaction to authority can be interpreted as laziness sometimes. But laziness as an obstacle to practice has to do with the difficulty just getting to the cushion. That thinking about meditating, instead of it being a pleasant prospect, can seem like a heavy lift. He says that in terms of shamatha practice, laziness is a feeling of heaviness in which you have no appreciation of your existence. See, we have no appreciation of our existence when we are not fully experiencing it. That here we are, after all, in this precious human birth, as one of the reminders says, free and well favored, that we have the great good fortune of teachers who transmit the teachings of the lineage and the support of a sangha. And we can have no appreciation of that. And more importantly, we lack the appreciation of our existence until we wake up. You see, until we exert ourselves to practice and to start coming out of our dreams and become fully present to the vibrancy of the phenomenal world as it arises in every moment. See? And that is how we begin to truly appreciate this human existence. Without that, the prospect of meditating can seem like a chore, drudgery. Now, on the other hand, he says, in contrast to such laziness, exertion has a quality of enthusiasm or joy. With exertion, you do not see meditation as a struggle. And he goes on, instead, your meditation cushion is seen as an invitation, and shamatha practice is regarded as a way to wake yourself up. There it is. The next obstacle, forgetfulness. He says, laziness is a difficulty of getting to your meditation cushion, whereas forgetfulness happens once you're already sitting on the cushion. And forgetfulness the term may be a little misleading, that in shamatha practice, forgetfulness is like losing track of what you're doing, kind of forgetting that you're meditating and then dropping the effort of being aware of coming back to the present. That the thoughts and feelings come up, you just go with them, like kind of like taking a vacation from your practice in the privacy of your own mind, you might say. He says that forgetfulness means feasting your mind on discursive thoughts, daydreams, and fantasies. And he also says that these first two obstacles can be corrected easily by studying the 7 characteristics of a dharmic person. And this is something we covered a little while ago in chapter 20, Becoming a Dharmic Person. And I'll mention them briefly here as a reminder. I'm not going to try to give a recap, but they were the characteristics of a dharmic person, or passionlessness, contentment, fewer activities, good conduct, awareness of the teacher, and propagating prajna. And it may be worthwhile, actually, I would recommend occasionally reviewing that studying these characteristics and developing them in yourself is certainly an effective way to correct laziness and forgetfulness. So you see, a dharmic person is one who has changed their allegiance, that has given up window shopping, is no longer clinging to dreams of the future, memories of the past. And to the extent that we can become a dharmic person, then it is not difficult to recognize these first two obstacles, laziness, forgetfulness, to just recognize them as they come up and simply wake up. So the next obstacle, drowsiness and depression. The third obstacle to shamatha, drowsiness and depression, he says, is connected with the three lower realms, the hell realm, the hungry ghost realm, and the animal realm. And these are three of the six realms that John just talked about in the previous chapter. Okay, something that's worthwhile to bring up here actually is that we experience these realms in three different ways. Briefly, that first of all, you can be born into a realm, like we're born into the human realm. Cats and dogs are born into the animal realm. The second is that you exhibit the psychology of the realm in a persistent way, that this can be for long periods of time, decades, for your entire life. And I think all of us have known people who are just kind of inhabit a certain realm, the realm of the the jealous gods. They're just always seeking that one thing that will finally put them into the same category as the gods, or people in the hell realm. I had a dear friend who just seemed to be stuck in the hell realm and eventually took his own life. So this is the kind of hardwired, you might say. But the third type is what you experience in daily life. That during the day, we might have that experience of a jealous God, or someone cuts us off in traffic and boom, we're in the hell realm. And we can move in and out of these realms, at times inhabiting several. So it can be useful to understand this schema because it can help us to have a better understanding of what's going on up here, really, which is one of the fundamental things that you gain, as John was saying, from meditation. Let me see, he says here somewhere, where is it? Yeah. The lower realms are seen as savage realms. In the hell realm, you are tremendously tortured. In the hungry ghost realm, you are poverty stricken and hungry. In the animal realm, you are stupid and unwilling to relate to anything. And the thing is, these realms are claustrophobic, that you're cut off from direct experience. You're cut off from your own basic goodness. That it can be like being in a swamp, and that dwelling in this stew, since body follows mind, we're distracted, sleepy, unappreciative of the phenomenal world, of what is actually here right now. That we're cut off from the subtlety and beauty that this world that we inhabit has. The next one is, next obstacle. And by the way, the next chapter is all about antidotes to these, so come back next week. The next one is wildness and craziness. Wildness and craziness, I think of this as the opposite of drowsiness, also known as, you might say, monkey mind, that your thoughts are energetic, intrusive, that before you know it, you're just immersed in memories from a distant past or dreams of the future. He says your fantasies become absolutely too much and you develop elaborate schemes. And these energetic thoughts produce three different kinds of fantasies that is worth pointing out. And John spoke of this too, that there's lust, which, okay, we all know what that is. There's aggression, which may be anger, but can also be in the form of resentment or just dislike or distaste. These are all forms of aggression. That when you're captured by this, there's real energy with it. You dig up memories of those times in the past where someone did something awful and imagine sweet revenge or things like that. And then regret. And in this case, regret is regretting that you ever got involved in this practice. It has become a struggle of never ending failures to achieve some imagined peaceful state. So these all come from wildness and craziness. And then there is carelessness, not bothering to do it properly, is the way I think of it. This is good enough, going through the motions, not taking care with the posture. That the practice does require a certain degree of precision. It's important to pay attention to details and to do it properly and fully. And with carelessness, maybe you invent your own kind of version of meditation where it's okay to go off places in your mind. And so he says, you know that you should be you know what should be overcome and what should be cultivated, and you've had some experience with that, but you couldn't be bothered. You can't be bothered because you're unwilling to let go of the entertainment of ego, briefly. And then finally, there's, this is finally, not quite finally, lack of coordination. He says, as you practice sitting meditation, you become so tender, so soft, and so vulnerable that you're willing to give in to any distraction. Now, John actually spoke of this also, the lack of coordination. The lack of coordination is what happens when you're not really here in the physical world, in this body, that you're off somewhere, reliving a memory or replaying a favorite dream of the future, that your mind's somewhere else, you're here. Then, when you realize that you're lost in thought, in that moment, your mind and body are now coordinated. That elsewhere, he calls this synchronizing mind and body. That when the mind is here with the body in this present moment, there is clarity, openness. You're right here meditating. And this is being coordinated. And then finally, it says, saving yourself from yourself. The 6 obstacles to shamatha practice, he's saying, are not particularly demanding, but they need to be overcome. To overcome them, you need to touch in with reality. That's coming back into the present. And you need to connect properly and fully with your practice. It is very ordinary and quite simple. Now, quite ordinary and quite simple, yes. The core, the heart of the practice is very simple. It's simply coming back. However, that's not something most of us can do that easily. So, the Hinayana is referred to as the yana of details and of precision. And there is a certain amount of precision and details and really picking apart what's going on to become fully aware of what's actually happening. And so that's why studying these obstacles can have value. Studying the six realms or the attributes of a dharmic person can be helpful, because the better understanding we have of these things, then we begin to recognize all this stuff in ourselves. And that helps to become more fully present. He says laziness, forgetfulness, drowsiness, wildness, and so on all arise because you have enslaved yourself. So to begin with, you have to save yourself from yourself. Enslaved yourself, really? Yeah, we are all enslaved by the ego. Really. That by believing that all of these thoughts and feelings we have are real somehow, have real value, that the stories we tell ourselves are important. They define who we are, that we would be lost without them. But actually, we're lost with them, lost in dreams, lost in the belief that I is real, has real substance. This is the root of our suffering and the root of samsara. That the Hinayana is also known as the path of individual liberation. So that liberation is escaping this enslavement to the ego. This does not mean some far off goal of perfect enlightenment. It's in every moment of wakefulness in our lives every day. And I think I stopped there so we can have some discussion. Questions, criticisms, complaints? Philip.
So I'll start. Thank you both very much. That was good. Some teachers will simplify this and say there are basically two things, right? There's dullness and there's excitement. And where you want to be is in the middle between those two things. You sit on your cushion, you don't want to be nodding off and falling asleep, nor do you want to be galloping ahead at 1,000,000 miles an hour into some dream that's never happened and never will happen. So you want to find that place in the middle where you're just fully present right here on the spot. So, and we have a tendency, I do anyhow, to drift off always into dullness or into excitement. So over and over and over again, I find myself coming back to that middle point.
Yeah. Frederick.
I got a question. You know, this experience I have sometimes during meditation where I'm just sitting there and there might be some of these things like wildness going on, and I relax into it, and tears will just kind of burst out of my eyes sometimes. And I don't see him talking about that, but you know, does anyone have that experience, realization? Has Chogyam Trungpa said anything about it? You know, I'm curious about that.
I've had similar experience there, something like that. I don't know, John. Yeah.
No, I mean, what are you feeling when that happens? Happy, sad, in between?
It's not really consistent. You know, the first time it happened, there was just this wild aggression in the story, and then the story dropped. And I almost wonder if it's just like, oh, is this just suppressed feeling or experience that's coming loose and becoming present, or something releasing? I'm not sure what it is.
You know, it's reminding me of what maybe it's in the Shambhala teachings where Trungpa would talk about this tender heart, this sad and tender heart,
Yeah.
and it may just be that.
Yeah,
I mean,
that sounds right, because like my eyes are starting to do that now as you say that. It's like,
yeah, there could definitely be a kind of openness that comes from this that I have found myself, in, yeah, just in daily life, encountering something and it just bringing tears to my eyes.
and so maybe it's relief. That's what I'm
Could be.
realizing. Yeah. Or joy. Well, it's a mixed thing. I'm not quite familiar with.
Well, you know, they say that the entry into the Mahayana, which comes after the Hinayana, is the first bhumi is called great joy, and I've always thought that it might be called great relief, being relieved of all this baggage we cart around of the ego.
Yeah, right. The conflicting emotions, the ego, all that, just it's gone. Even if it's just for a second, it's a great relief. Thank you.
Mm.
Well, I guess we could end early if nobody's got something.
I think of the contrast between thinking mind and pure awareness here in the present moment is profound. Thinking mind is so limited, so small, narrow little worlds of that are created in thought. And then there's this world, which is choiceless. It's just here for us. It is us. And really, we're being enjoined to let go of thought. I think of in the third volume of the Profound Treasury of the Ocean of Dharma, there is a passage on page 400 to 401 in which Trungpa Rinpoche goes on and on about how you don't need thought. Are you familiar with it? Anybody?
What page of which book?
Let me get it. I'll just
Yeah, I
read it.
read that on your recommendation today. It's a great passage.
Isn't that an amazing passage?
Yeah, I'm just familiar with you telling that a few times the past few years, and it blew my mind the first time I heard it.
I'll just read this to you. Because I think that it's funny, and I see he always taught, even the beginning teachings, from a tantric Vajrayana point of view, from an advanced point of view.
Oh, excuse me, John.
Yeah?
Didn't you need to leave?
Oh, I forgot. I'm not going to do that, I guess. I do
Okay.
need, but I'll just read this and then I'll go. I've got a health thing that I would like to attend. I'll just read this for you. He says, he'd been talking about something else, which is you can just sort of file away. He says that union or bringing together of the teacher and yourself makes it possible for you to work together, you and the teacher. It is the experience of Dakpa Gak, the cessation or stopping of thoughts. That's what happens between the student and the teacher in an ideal situation. By stopping thoughts, we're not talking about becoming zombies. You have to be quite careful about that. We cut conceptualization, but the natural functioning mind and general awareness still goes on continuously. In fact, it is cultivated further by the Vipassana experience. Later on, it becomes the upaya, that's the skillful means, the skill of the Vajrayana disciplines as well. So that particular aspect of mind could be sharpened. There is never a need for conceptual thinking. Shall I read that again? There is never a need for conceptual thinking. Nobody needs it. It is absolutely unnecessary, conceptual thinking, because it produces pain and the unnecessary fortification of ego. That is what conceptual mind is for, to build your ego fortification. It is for me, for I. It is about how to be I, how to build myself up, and that is not necessary. There could be a world without I.
Wow.
Wow is right.
That's
I do
good.
have to go. I'm sorry, I forgot. I've got an appointment. So I'm going to leave early. See you all next week.
Okay, sure.
That's fun.
Thank you.
Okay, bye.
Bye.
Wait, if you close, it's going to close the meeting.
No, I'm going to make you co-host.
Make me host. Okay.
Thank you, John.
Thank
Thanks
you.
very much. Sorry.
Thank you.
Does anybody have the page number? I didn't catch the page number.
401, I think.
Okay, thank you.
Let me go-
Of this book?
No,
Of the third
volume,
volume. Let me
volume
grab my
3.
book.
Oh, volume 3.
Yeah. It's going to be a while before we get to that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So-
that, when I heard that,
Yes,
Mhm.
401.
Thank you.
So, anything else?
Well, can I just try a practical example so that I could wrap my head around it? Because I'm having a little bit of trouble with it. So if I just take an example of, upsetting things that can happen in life. So let's say, I don't know, my son gambles, on the internet, and I find out, $2,000 on my credit card or something like this. Now, it's very easy for me to go into the realm of which one is it for the snake for aggression? Like I'll become upset, right, or something like this.
Yeah. Yeah.
But then we talk about and then my thoughts are going to go wild in terms of, oh my God, I'm not going to make my payments for the month or something like this. So what does that really mean in the practical nature of it? Is it simply my being able to my being able to be aware that, oh, I'm in that realm right now and there goes my thoughts, and bring myself back? Or is it that I'm such a experienced meditator that I end up being able to stay in between the excitement in terms of getting very upset and the calm, and just staying in the middle, staying in a more serene place? Or what does it mean in terms of real life? Sorry.
It
So
looks
if
like
I could take a stab at that, Barry. I think probably you already know this. So the Buddhists talk about relative truth and absolute truth. So we live in a relative world, right? So if your checking account is drained and you can't pay your bills, that is indeed a real problem. It's a real relative problem. But what you already know regarding your son is that you love him unconditionally. That's the absolute truth. The relative truth is you hate this behavior.
Mm.
And the two things are happening at once.
Yes.
We
So,
often lose sight of what really matters. In this case, the fact that you love your son unconditionally, because we're so wrapped up in the day-to-day relative truth. We're thinking me, I. But actually, our world is much bigger than that. But as a mother, you already have this automatic insight into ultimate truth. That's
Mm,
what the unconditional love is all about. That would be my answer for you.
Yeah, no, that's right. And in addition, um, these these realms that we're just talking about, this is really talking about in meditation practice, especially gaining a better understanding of what our minds are doing, so
mm,
that in daily life that can be helpful in
mm.
can see that, boy, oh boy, this sure looks like I'm getting deep into this. And it can be helpful in not getting carried away
Right.
in your thoughts and fears and anxieties or, whatever's going on. And actually be able to see a little more clearly what's actually happening and be able to respond with more intelligence in that way. So it isn't about trying to achieve some wonderful,
Mm,
state where you can just sort of ride through these things.
right.
Stuff happens. We're here in the real world. We never leave it. That's not what this is about. It's actually being more in the real world, being really fully here and fully
Mm,
engaged. So
Yeah, that's well said. What most people would like to do upon discovering that their money has been drained from their checking account is just whop them upside the head. But really, what good is that going to do?
right. Yeah, and I think for me it's exactly as you've been saying, Barry, as I'm kind of new at this, but what I've been noticing is, well, the awareness. So it helps, so one will, I will still have that was a fictitious example, but I will still have the anger in whatever situation, but I'm able to become more aware of the storyline I'm creating and where my mind goes, and it helps because then you can come back to the present, and rather than go on with the drama kind of thing that one can create, right?
exactly. Yeah,
Yeah.
you got it.
Thank you.
Another thing I was thinking about, Barry, and this is related to the last couple of days, we've been talking about trying to understand where the other person is coming from. And essentially, we are clueless. We have no idea where other people are coming from. And we really need to absorb that and live from that position. So, I mean, everybody has examples of this. John was talking about someone who's treating him badly. He has no idea why. And somebody else is talking about someone who just came up to her in the bathroom and instantly it basically attacked her. And she had no idea why. I thought made me think of my two sons who are 12 and 17. And they often bring their negativity to me simply because it's easier and safer than it is for them to bring it to their teacher or to a policeman, or for that matter, to their mother, right? Um, and and it really bothered me until I realized what's going on. But until I realized that, I had no idea where they were coming from.
Mm,
And generally we never do. We just go through this world from this place of utter profound ignorance
Yeah,
and hope for the best, right?
that's very good. And by the way, one of the attributes, or I think is I think it's true for everyone that as you continue practicing, that you'll find that you start becoming more and more interested and curious about what's going on with the other person and much less attached to yourself. You know, you get, was it Robert Chender said, I love this. He said, don't get angry, get curious. And I thought that was just wonderful, right? You find yourself getting angry at someone. Well, what's really going on here? Really? You know, what's happening?
Yeah. Sometimes I think my children don't know me and I don't know them, really. And I think of that astonishing thing I saw in Amsterdam at the Anne Frank house. Anne Frank's father had no idea, he said, of what was going on in her thoughts and her and who she was. Astonishing. I mean, they were living like sardines in this attic for months and months and months. And she was a teenager. She wasn't, and she was expressing herself in this writing, in this diary, and so forth. And he had no idea, he said, of who she was and what she was up to.
Yeah. The fact is, each of us is living in our own world.
Yeah, for sure. And I keep coming back again and again, finding myself wishing things were other than what they are. I start feeling stirred up. I start doing this, start doing that. And once again, it's wishing, expecting, trying to make things other than what they are. You know? I mean, this morning, Herb's aide didn't show up on time to get him to the VA hospital an hour away. And I had to drop everything, get in the car, drive like hell at 80 miles an hour in order to get us there. And I got us there. And the whole time I was saying to myself, this is good. You were wishing that it wasn't the way it was. And at least you're seeing it. At least you're seeing it. And let me watch out for cops real sharp.
Yeah, that's very good, Judith. Because the world will never be the way we want it, and we want it to be. And that doesn't matter anyhow, because if it wasn't this, it'd be something else. And wasn't something else, it'd be a third thing, right? There's no end to problems. They just push each other out of the way, but they just keep coming. What Buddhism teaches is equanimity. That's all. That's our only chance, is to
Accept it.
accept it, to live in the world as it is, and more than that, to appreciate it, to pay attention and to appreciate it, because it is a beautiful thing, and we won't have it for long, not in this body, and we don't have much control, really, except that we can change our point of view.
Absolutely. That's it. That is the great shift that can and hopefully increasingly takes place.
It does. It is happening. I see it happening in everyone in the Sangha. I see it happening in you.
Oh, muchas gracias.
Now, it is time, by the way, to say goodnight. Does anybody else have one more thing? Or yes, Fred.
And Lena mentioned, the realms, my this experience of, bursting through relief. I was going through my own hell realm experience. And what I just discovered recently that, there's a story of the Buddha where he reincarnated in the hell realm, and he was physically, or I don't know physically, but he was in the hell realm. He wasn't a human. And he saw that no matter what he did, like he had this yoke to him, and this other person had a yoke to him, and they were trying to move, and it was no good. And he told the guard, he said, "Hey, strap both of the yokes on me. Let me do it myself." And it kind of shocked everybody in the hell realm, because I don't think anybody had that idea before, that action. And he got instantly teleported out of there, from what I read and understood.
Mm.
Like just prayer, aspiration, not even knowing what to do. It's like, all right, what do you do in this crappy situation? I don't know. Aim to help them, somebody. Oh yeah, then there's that sense of relief coming again. I feel it.
There you go.
Yeah.
Okay,
Learned something
folks.
today. Thank you, Barry.
Okay. And
Thank you. And thank John.
oh, I almost forgot. We got chants and stuff. Hold on a second. Let me get my gong and I forgot all about that. Okay. Hold on. Come back to here. That, you got this. And okay. Here we go. Oh, and I should mute everyone so we don't have cacophony. I forgot all about doing the chants. Okay. By the blessings of enlightened and compassionate ones, by the power of my positive actions of 3 times and my prayers of pure aspiration, may wars, conflicts, epidemics, and all other maladies dissolve in this world, and may the earth and all who live on this earth enjoy the abundance of well-being. May all learn to live lovingly with each other. By this merit, may all obtain omniscience. May it defeat the enemy wrongdoing. From the stormy waves of birth, old age, sickness, and death, from the ocean of samsara, may I free all beings. By the confidence of the golden sun of the great east, may the lotus garden of the Rigna's wisdom bloom. May the dark ignorance of sentient beings be dispelled. May all beings enjoy profound, brilliant glory.
Thanks, Mary. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you all.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night.
Ready?
Have a good night, everyone.
you.